Crazy Dog Audio Theatre and Tin Pot Productions present Poet Laureate of the People's Republic of Cork. Selections from the poetry of Gerry Murphy, set to music and sound by Roger Gregg. Programme 1. In fairness, Gerry, there is not a sentence.
So this is the first of 5 programs celebrating the work of someone who to me is truly the Poet Laureate of the People's Republic of Cork. A very distinctive poet who, as we'll hear in this program, stands quite apart from his peers. And first up, in an interview recorded backstage, we hear from playwright and author Conal Creedon, who claims to know Gerry Murphy from the very beginning.
Well, I'll tell you, I met Gerry when I was in school, right? We were in the same class. He's about 10 years older than me, right? We were in a 6th class together because there was sort of a tradition then for hurlers to stay back a year or two. No, Gerry wasn't a hurler, but he stayed back about 20 years, right?
The poet in paradise. Within a very short time of my untimely death, I began to feel bitterly cold and immediately cursed myself for neglecting to wear my heavy winter overcoat and indeed my thermal underwear as I faced the firing squad. But since the local press were determined to turning the occasion into a minor propaganda exercise on behalf of the government, I had decided to wear a light grey suit and a simple red tie to lend a little dignity to the sorry event. Within a very short time of my untimely death, I began to feel incredibly hungry and could have done with a cheese and tomato sandwich from the kitchen and perhaps even a bottle of chilled lager to wash it down. But the coroner was deep in conversation with the commander of the local garrison and failed to notice my urgent need. Anyway, eating so soon after such a major upset would probably have made me puke. Within a very short time of my untimely death, I began to itch furiously. Not just in the usual spots, but all over my body. And with the distinct feeling that my skin was starting to crawl. Of course, what I needed was a shower, and perhaps a little application of brute in the armpits and around the balls. But the undertaker was too busy with the guest list to attend to my trifling request. Within a very short time of my untimely death, I was in dire need of a leak. But the toilet was located at the opposite end of the mortuary. And besides, the mourners were milling about, blocking the entrance, and furthermore, the undertaker's daughter had taken the precaution of tying a neat little bow tightly around my pizzle. Within a very short time of my untimely death, I began to feel outrageously randy and found myself considering a quick feel up the skirt of the wife of the president. But the gravedigger completely ignored my morbid erection and began hammering down the lid.
in our Leaving Cert class, there were 2 guys with beards. There was 2 qualified accountants. There was 2 unqualified accountants, and me and Gerry.
The maker, Daedalus, for all his celebrated ingenuity, was miffed. Talos, his nephew and apprentice, inspired by the jawbone of a lizard, had invented the saw. Here at last was something with universal application. Unlike labyrinths, hollow wooden cows, golden honeycombs, or countless moving statues. In a fit of pique, he enticed Talos to view Athens from the summit of the Acropolis and flung him to his death. Jesus.
Short jazz piece. Without so much as a nod to the havoc you create, you climb from the pool and walk to the dressing room. A thin wisp of cloth caught in the lovely swell of your buttocks, riding the smooth power of your hips, exciting a rampant snarl of lust. My heart skips a beat. Two, if you like.
I remember one day the English teacher came along with one of Gerry's essays and said, Gerry, in fairness, he said, "There is not a sentence." He said, you know, you're never going to be a prose writer. He said, could you try poetry? And I think, because Gerry's punctuation is terrible, right? And everybody knows that you don't need punctuation for poetry, right? You just sort of sprinkle it like, you know, pepper on a stew, right? You just dots, dashes, quavers, semiquavers, colons, semicolons, and throw it there. And the less words on the page, like the cooler the poem, right? So I think that's how Gerry got into it.
Oh, fuck off. No mention in the Morning Clarion of the miraculous appearance of the image of an image of the Blessed Virgin in raised pastry on a chicken and mushroom pie in a fish and chip shop on the South Douglas Road. Or of the vast and already heaving multitudes quickly bust into place and intoning decade after decade of the Rosary. Or of the swiveling dickhead dead Elvis lookalike who purchased the marvelous pie and insisted upon his inalienable right to consume it there and then, much to the chagrin of the murmuring throng. And yes, you do get tired of it all. The entire, or at least the observable universe, and the aloof orbital indifference of the planets, and the grotesque distances between stars, and the eternal oscillation between expansion and contraction, and the growing realization that everything you have said and done up to now, with the understandable exception of an evening alone in the paradisal shadows of the Alhambra, may be part of an extremely elaborate dream you are having in your tipsy mother's womb. Or the awful possibility that you are already 1,000 years dead and haunting the shattered empty shell of yourself. And the grim possibility that it would have been infinitely better for all concerned if you had never been born. In fact, it would solve everything for once and for all. If someone could arrange to send that little Dutch fucker back through a wormhole in the space-time continuum to stick his finger in the Big Bang. This is the 4th time I have met that end of the world is nigh idiot, the day after his predicted end of the world whimper. And this is the 4th time he has justified the ultimate non-event with the pompous declaration that to all intents and purposes, the world ended ages ago, with the awareness of the interminable recycling of history and the whirling momentum of time. And just as I am beginning to think that he is right after all, I read in the Evening Bugle that this very same prick in the furs has won the lotto. I mean, even I do the lotto.
He's been improving ever since. I think he needs to work on his rhyming a bit. I find sometimes the rhyme in one of his poems, it doesn't turn up until maybe 3 poems later, you know, that kind of thing, but it is getting better and they're getting closer together.
The 6th Circle. Farinata, hailing Dante from his burning tomb. Brings me back, the soaking pits in the steelworks. "10 feet deep cavities. Caked in glistening slag. Which we hacked, still hot, from the steep walls and shoveled into bins. Until the ladder was lowered. And that infernal foreman beckoned us to the surface again.
But the real truth about Gerry's poetry, I think, is that this is genuine, right? I think there's a whole body of Cork poets, you know, the last 20, 30 years, people like, you know, the Paddy Galvins and these brilliant people, really. Obviously Theo Dorgan, Desmond O'Grady, they'd be considered Cork poets because that's where a lot of them were based, and Irish language poets as well, and also lyric writers, people like John Spillane and Jimmy McCarthy and all these people, right? But I do think, not in a league, because there isn't a league of who's better, who's worse, but I do think that Gerry's stuff will jump out as being different. And that's the truth. I think, like, in time, you know, when people look at all this stuff together, because it's very strong in its own individuality. It's like a painting that doesn't need to be signed. You know his work just on sight. You'd almost know it on smell, actually, tell the truth. But no, and I think that's the beauty. That's the beauty of his work. But I think that's what will and does make his work special in time. That it's so individualistic.
My kisses are like bees on your honey-colored hair, sweetly mistaken. And your kisses like rain on the forgotten desert of my abdomen.
Gerry thinks he's a friend of mine, but in fact I'm just one of the few people who'll say hello to him, right?
Easter Sunday. Woke with a mild hangover. Went straight to the bathroom. Stared down from the bleary heights into the placid waters of the bowl. Thought my face framed therein looked remarkably like the face of Christ. Was most reluctant to piss across it. Did. Happy Easter.
You know, there was big trouble where he fell out with the publisher over that spelling lawsuit, over his spelling being so bad. And then the fact that he's barred from most of the pubs and things, it sort of means that, yeah, I suppose I'm his friend, really. No, not at all. I think the guy's a star, pure star, you know.
Intimations of mortality. Not long after the tooth fairy stopped leaving shiny new pennies under my pillow, the angel of death, gathering my mother into his huge beating wings, shook a dusty black feather onto my bed.
You have been listening to programme 1 of a 5-part series presenting the Poet Laureate of the People's Republic of Cork, the poetry of Gerry Murphy, set to music and sound by Roger Gregg. This has been a special programme from Crazy Dog Audio Theatre and Tin Pot Productions, and features the voice and musical talents of Liam Heffernan, Morgan C. Jones, Charlie Murphy, David Farrell, Emer O'Grady and Roger Gregg, with guest appearances from Charlie Ruxton, Niamh Linehan, Miles Breen, David Murray and the Gaiety School of Acting. Music and soundscapes composed by Roger Gregg with contributions from the cast. The live show was recorded at the Everyman Palace Bar with sound engineer Mark McGrath, stage director and audio producer Roger Gregg, executive producer Daryl Moorhouse. Special thanks to the Everyman Palace Theatre, Daedalus Press, Courtyard Studio, UCC Campus Radio, and to Conal Creedon, Hugh Lorrigan, Mick Hannigan, Pat Cotter and Tony Sheehan. This programme is made possible by grants from the Arts Council of Ireland and by the BCI's Sound and Vision Broadcasting Scheme. Find out more about Gerry Murphy, his books, the CD, the YouTube videos and the live show by visiting us at tin.pot.com and crazydogaudiotheatre.com.